Hello, I'm Neil Whelan and welcome to the Wesleyan Podcast. In this episode, brought to you by Wesleyan Financial Services, Partnership Account Manager Carly Millan Page talks to Specialist Financial Planner Graham Hutton, along with Bryan and Louisa Slimm of Carter Bond Solicitors, about why partnership agreements are vital for dental practices. They explain how they protect NHS contracts, define partners' roles, manage disputes, illness or death, and safeguard business value, as well as the importance of regularly reviewing them. Of course, this podcast is for information only and doesn't constitute financial advice. But if you do need to talk to someone about your finances, I'll be back at the end to tell you how to get in touch with us. But for now, I'll hand you over to Louisa, Connor, Graham, and first up, Carly.
Hello and welcome to the latest Wesleyan podcast. Today we're speaking to Graham Hutton, Specialist Financial Planner at Wesleyan Financial Services, Bryan and Louisa Slimm from Carter Bond Solicitors. So, firstly, thank you all so much for joining us today to talk around the subject of partnership agreements and their valuable role within a dental practice. Firstly, Connor, I'm going to come to you. Can you just explain a little bit about your role within Carter Bond and why practices should have a partnership agreement in place?
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, thanks for having us on the podcast. My name's Connor and I'm an associate here at Carter Bond Solicitors. So I've been advising dentists for the last decade in terms of buying and selling practices, creating partnership agreements, action and retirement, and incorporating practices, to name a few things that I deal with here. But in a nutshell, I just wheel and deal in practices all day. You won't catch me buying a sweet shop, and I won't be selling a plumbing business. Literally just wheel and deal in dental practices, like I say. But in terms of having a partnership agreement in place, obviously, if you have an NHS contract in place and it's in your sole name, if you were to unfortunately pass away, then that contract is as good as gone. Basically, the NHS would be looking to retender it, and obviously the family would not benefit from any sale proceeds. And as we all know, you can't sell an NHS contract, but we can transfer it by way of partnership route. Now, having a partnership agreement in place basically negates that, because let's say one of the partners pass away, unfortunately, you'll have the other partner there who can obviously still be a name on the contract and effectively transfer it over to someone else when you sell the practice. And from another angle as well, having a partnership agreement in place just protects the actual interests of the contract as a whole. Do you know what I mean? Because there's two people on it, you've got two people burdening do you know what I mean? Like shouldering the risk of the contract on both sets of shoulders.
Excellent. So, Louisa, can I just bring you in at this point? What sort of clauses are usually incorporated in a standard partnership agreement?
Yes, firstly, thanks for having me on the podcast, Carly. Yes, so within a standard partnership agreement, you'd usually expect to see, for example, capital contributions, so how much each partner is contributing, and then any future contributions that will be expected, ratio in profits and losses, and how this is shared between the partners. An important one is decision making, so who has day-to-day control on the decisions made, what decisions actually need all partners' consent. And another important factor is what happens in the event of death or retirement, or if one partner wants to sell. They're just a few examples of areas that are covered, but they're quite important factors when running a dental practice as a partnership, as they will help you protect your interests moving forwards and any potential issues that may arise in the future. Partnership agreements can also contain restrictive covenants, again, also another important factor, so that in the event that one partner did sell, you obviously want to protect the goodwill, and your restrictive covenants within the partnership agreement would look to do that for you.
Oh, brilliant. Thanks, Louisa. That sounds great for the partners. So, Graham, what is your role within all this in terms of the financial impact of partnership agreements?
So a detailed agreement, what it does is ensures that all partners know their rights and obligations, and it helps prevent any financial misunderstanding and disagreements. And that's vitally important, especially in a partnership. As Louisa said, these agreements are crucial as they dictate the share and profits and loss each partner is entitled to, and knowing that from the outset. They also provide a clear outline and agreed provision if one partner is unable to work through accident or sickness, what happens from there. Can also provide an agreed exit process, such as notice period, the valuation requirements, and the process required for transferring the owner's ownership and assets, as Connor explained to a minute ago. A partnership agreement can ensure the procedures to resolve any disagreements quickly and cost effectively are included, and this can minimise the financial impact of any disputes that can arise. So it's vitally important that a partnership agreement is in place.
Yeah, it sounds like that's really the bedrock of any practice and helping it run smoothly. Connor, from a legal perspective, what do you think would happen if there was no agreement in place? Like, what challenges would this pose to a practice?
In terms of if the practitioner was to pass away?
Yeah.
So in terms of that situation, so we see that quite a bit. I've got an ongoing file at the moment where unfortunately the wife is not a dentist and her husband's passed away, and there's an NHS contract in place. So at the moment she's like scrambling to try and find another dentist, one of his old university friends, potentially an associate at the practice, to try and man that contract, so she then has the ability to transfer it. But because she's doing that process now after the worst has happened, she's the one on the back foot. Do you know what I mean? So by having someone already on the contract before any of this happens, and having an actual partnership agreement in place, documenting what happens should the worst happen to either party, then the estate is then protected. Do you know what I mean? Because like I say, when a practitioner does pass away, unfortunately, and then you've got to go to the ICB and you've got to tell them this, then their default is, well, give us the contract back, we'll retender it. And in that situation, then NHS practices, for example, if it's a sole NHS practice, then you're just taking the whole income away from the practice. The practice is just folded. Do you know what I mean? So as in it's just a massive risk, and you're shouldering that risk by having another partner on there, detailing the arrangements, and just effectively just protecting it from termination should the worst happen. Do you know what I mean? Obviously, if you're going into business as well with someone, let's say you and a friend from university are going to buy an NHS practice, but you aren't family members and you get on quite well, there's nothing to say that further down the road that you don't have a dispute, or you might have a major falling out. Do you know what I mean? So it's important to have a proper partnership agreement in place in that scenario as well, to detail what happens if we have a bit of a Barney. Do you know what I mean? If we have some sort of fallout, we need deadlock provisions to basically say, if this happens, then this; if that happens, then that. And it's having all parties on the same page at a certain point in time when they're amicable. So if it does deteriorate, then you can get out of it. Do you know what I mean? Because we also, I mean, in terms of having partnership agreements for NHS contracts, that's one side of things, but you can have a partnership agreement for a private practice as well. Do you know what I mean? Because like I say, you go into business together, you're all pally, and then there might be a fallout. Do you know what I mean? And we need to figure out what goes on. Graham has got a few horror stories, you know what I mean, from clients who have not got a proper partnership agreement in place. And it's just everything's up in the air. Nothing's in writing, so anything goes, really. Do you know what I mean? It's the Wild West. So from a private point of view as well, that is why it's worth having a proper partnership agreement, because who knows what's around the corner.
Oh, Connor, thanks so much for that. And I mean, in a time of like grief or stress where there's been disputes, it sounds particularly painful for practitioners. And then, as you say, the business still has to continue somehow to pay for staff and running costs. Louisa, in your experience, what are the main pain points for dentists who maybe do have a partnership agreement in place, but it maybe no longer fits either the structure or the working practices of the business?
So very often we come across clients who did do the right thing at the very outset and put a partnership agreement in place, whether that's an NHS practice or a private practice. They all sat down and put it down on paper how the situation is going to pan out. But over the years, the practice has changed, people have left, people have joined. So it's absolutely imperative that whilst you do the right thing at the outset and get your agreement in place, you then keep your eye on that agreement and constantly revisit it. Does it actually reflect what's going on in the practice at the moment? If you don't, and let's say the last time you looked at your partnership agreement was 10 years ago, it can lead to, like we've touched on previously, disputes, unequal workloads. If there's been changes to the profit distribution or capital distributions, that may not be fairly reflected anymore. And I think the main one that I come across is where a partner has left and a new partner's joined, but the partnership agreement doesn't reflect the new partner. The new partner will have roles and responsibilities. The partnership agreement doesn't reflect that. And from a sales and purchases perspective, if one or all partners then look to come and sell, any new buyer is going to ask for sight of the partnership agreement. And if you can produce one which is accurate, up to date, it makes your sale process smoother. It can save you considerable money in any potential disputes that may arise. And it just makes all parties know, so seller, buyer, remaining partners, everybody knows exactly what steps have to be taken, and it makes the whole process a lot smoother for you and can save you a considerable amount of money in potential disputes. So yes, if you've got your partnership agreement in place, that's fabulous, but just make sure you keep your eye on it, keep revisiting it, keep going back to it, and make sure it actually reflects the business that you're actually running today. And in the future, everybody has a long-term goal of hopefully selling. It will make your sale process a lot smoother for you.
Oh, excellent. Thanks so much, Louisa. It almost sounds like, from a financial perspective, we like to review finances on a regular basis. So, Graham, at this point, I'll loop you in because I feel like this is really appropriate. From a financial perspective, what are the implications of A, not having an agreement in place, and B, not having an up-to-date agreement?
As Connor mentioned earlier, this is the bit where we see it from the other side in terms of when things go wrong, from not having a partnership agreement in place. I mean, a lot of these guys are relying on, the Partnership Agreement Act from 1890. I mean, this is 135-year-old, might not suit your requirements at this stage. But unfortunately, by not having one in place, there's no guidance to either partner when something does go wrong. And this is when the fallouts happen. It's normally as a result, most commonly we come across, and the result of either one of the partners is long-term sick or actually diagnosed with a serious illness, but they're still receiving a share of the profits of the business and not actually doing anything. And this is where the real resentment comes in. I mean, we come across, partners that have been friends since university who can no longer be in the same room as each other. And it's just terrible situation because it's too late at that point. Once it's all broken down and one of them is ill and everything else, there's nothing really we can do apart from mediating slightly by not having it in. And again, by not reviewing it and not having an up-to-date one. I've very rarely come across anyone or any partnership that has actually reviewed their partnership agreement. In fact, it's very rare to come across anyone that's actually read it, which is more worrying. The likes of poor Connor and Louisa here are, writing up partnership agreements. Most entities don't read it. They just it goes in an envelope with everything else, so they don't really know the provisions until something actually goes wrong. And that's why we always recommend that it is reviewed regularly. Does it still provide the peace of mind and security that you want it to do? Was it actually drawn up by a dental specialist? Because some of them that we came across, it is clear that it has literally just been a standard partnership agreement that they could have downloaded from the internet and done it themselves. Because a dental practice is a kind of unique business, and it should be treated as that. So having a standard one doesn't work. And the other problems we see as well by not updating it, as Lee's mentioned before, I've been dealing with, similar situation. I've been dealing with a partnership recently where the partner retired and was bought out over 10 years ago, but the partnership agreement still states that on either of the current partner's deaths or the sale of the practice, he's getting a third share of it. You think, so our advice is review them and update them as and when required, but please review them on a regular basis.
Excellent, Graham. And I suppose by not reviewing, it poses significant challenges to both the dentist and the practice. Connor, from a legal perspective, if things change within a practice, what are the actions partners can take to ensure that they are not left vulnerable?
Sorry about that, I just realised I was on mute. Sorry. So no, in terms of the actions that partners can take to avoid a situation like this arising, is if you are in partnership and it's completely undocumented at the moment, then get in touch with someone like ourselves, like Graham, and we can build you a bespoke partnership agreement that will meet all of your needs. You'll be able to see eye to eye with what will happen if there's a fallout, and obviously it'll just document clearly everyone's roles and responsibilities, because like I say, if you're in partnership, one of the guys might be doing the financials heavily, so it might be one guy's responsibility to sort out all the accounts, not themselves, but I mean, like, that's their role in the partnership, to obviously liaise with the accountants, make sure all the associate pay is done, and while the other side, he might be more hands-on with the clinical, do you know what I mean? Making sure everyone's doing what they need to be doing on that side. And that is the beauty of a bespoke partnership agreement, because we can just detail everyone's roles within, and then obviously plan for the future. What happens when we exit? What's going to happen if we have a fallout? Do you know what I mean? And obviously at the start, I touched on NHS contracts as well. If you've got an NHS contract, we can build that in there. What happens if one of us dies? How's our family going to be looked after? Do you know what I mean? Because most of the time, the spouse isn't a dentist, you know what I mean? Some of the times they are, but like I say, the beneficiaries of the practice as a whole usually aren't dentists. So it's not really a business that me or you could just step into if our partner was a dentist and just start running it, because it's heavily regulated. Do you know what I mean? You'd have to have a certain set of skills to run a dental practice. So having a partnership agreement where you've got another dentist who is there and willing to protect the interests of the family if you're doing the same for them, it's in everyone's interest. Do you know what I mean? It's basically just having each other's back and having it documented legally. So I mean, yeah, like I say, it can be happy days 1 minute, can't it? You can have no partnership agreements, and then, like Graham says, you can have a fallout, and then, well, what's going on? Do you know what I mean? There's nothing legally enforceable there. Or if you have got a partnership agreement and it hasn't been updated, then again, you're stuck again. Do you know what I mean? So if you have got one, come to us and we can look at it. If you haven't got one, then now is the perfect time. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, that is it. Do you know what I mean? It's a safety net at the end of the day. It literally is it's your parachute if anything goes wrong. So it's very important to have one. And it's a cost that can be offset against the business. If you're in partnership, you can write it off against the business. Do you know what I mean? So it's not like you're going to pull the money out of your own pocket, take it out the business, get yourself proper partnership agreements, and protect your future interests. And that's it, really.
Excellent, Connor. Do you know what? That makes perfect sense. I love your analogy of it being a parachute for your business. Sounds absolutely fantastic. And I really just want to delve into a little bit deeper a point that you made about the change in services and structures of dental practices at the moment, because there is a lot of change within the dental industry and the services that a practice can offer. Louisa, do you think that moving forward, more practice agreements will require a review, given that there's been so much change within the dental industry in terms of the services that practices can offer and the change in roles and responsibilities within those practices?
Yeah, absolutely. I think obviously dentistry's changed considerably over the years. For example, there's a big focus on cosmetic dentistry growth, how practices are marketed with social media. A lot of practice owners have increased their dental practice from that one dental practice they purchased 10 years ago, and now potentially own several dental practices and have developed their own brand. Branding is quite a big thing now in the dental industry. So you just need to ensure your partnership agreement reflects your actual business that you own today, and it sets out clearly what's expected of all partners. It just helps protect your goodwill that obviously you've all worked so hard to develop. And you want to make sure that all partners represent your brand as expected. If you've got somebody that's really heavily on social media, do you expect your other partners to be doing the same and to be putting the same amount of effort into that for you? So I think absolutely, with the changes that have happened, it's no longer a one-page piece of paper with, if I die, this happens. You need to protect how your brand looks, how your practice looks, how you can grow it. What do you expect from each other, so that in 3 years' time you can move from one practice to 3 practices. Your long-term goals need to be protected in the partnership agreement.
Thank you so much, Louisa. And it's all really positive for dentistry, isn't it? There's going to be, with increasing services that dental practices can offer, that'll in turn result in increasing profits for practices. So Graham, what does this mean in terms of the value of the partnership and the potential risk to the business and the partners if, say, for example, you do have somebody who is heavily involved in the marketing, social media, or someone who does bespoke treatments within the practice? What does that mean if they were to leave the business, or even worse, get unwell or pass away?
As Louisa said, most dentists and practices are trying to grow and expand and everything else. Most dentists put their heart and soul into their businesses. But as you rightly said, there's things that cannot be controlled. But with the correct planning, without the correct planning, they can reduce the business value dramatically. I mean, in terms of sickness, what we would always ask in terms of a partnership agreement is what provisions are in place. How reliant is the business on your share of the income? Will it be maintained? Will that have a huge effect? How long does the sick partner receive a share of the profits? Is that going to stop at some point? Is that going to go indefinitely? The longer that goes, the less profit that's coming into the business. And also, if it is there in terms of to get someone else in to do your work, who's going to pay for a locum or someone else to come in? Is that going to be you as an individual? Is that got to be the business? Having a detailed partnership agreement has all this set out. And again, even if somebody wants to leave the practice, having that detail of who's going to value the business, how's it going to be valued, who's going to buy your shares, or your share in the business. At the end of the day, are you hoping that just your business partner is going to buy you out? And if they are, how are they going to raise the funds? And also on death, this is a big one where we see that there's not a lot of provisions put in place when the business has been set up from partners. It's that part of legacy planning in terms of what happens to the business if you're not here, and also how does the family get your share of that business? I mean, we're talking potentially, businesses worth £3, £4, £5 million. How does your partner get that £2, £3 million out to pay your family? So this is why having it all detailed from day one makes life so much easier. What we call the what ifs. What if something happens? Is it as detailed as it could be? If not, please review it.
Sounds like there's a lot of risk associated with running dental practices as well. So Graham, obviously, financial advisors review people's investments on a very regular basis. Do you think that it would be a prudent step for dental practice owners and partners to be reviewing these partnership agreements on as regular a basis?
Oh, most definitely. And that's something that we advocate, and especially reviewing it with a specialist solicitor. As I say, having it as specific as possible is paramount. In most instances, from a dentist's point of view, as I said, it's the biggest asset, the loan. But most will have their house, their car, even their mobile phone insured, but they don't protect their business. It's just this thing that they just never take into account. But as I say, it's the biggest asset they own. With a detailed partnership agreement that's drawn up through a specialist dental solicitor and forward planning, the majority of the what-if situations, although we can't avoid them, people do become sick. Unfortunately, people do die. And a lot of dentists know people who have unfortunately died or had to retire through ill health. But reviewing your requirements regularly means that you can have sufficient protection in place to provide security and peace of mind for all partners and for your families as well. So it's paramount that it's reviewed on a regular basis.
Absolutely, Graham, that's fantastic. And it's given us a real insight into the benefits for dentists trying to navigate quite complex situations, and also highlighted the importance of using specialist teams. So Connor, Graham, Louisa, thank you once again for joining us today. And I hope you've enjoyed this podcast brought to you from Wesleyan Financial Services and Carter Bond Solicitors.
And that's our show for this week. Thank you to Carly, Graham, Louisa and Connor. If you are looking for expert financial advice, go to wesleyan.co.uk where you can book an appointment with one of our specialist financial advisors. Charges may apply, but we won't charge you until you've agreed the services you require and the associated costs. Find out more at wesleyan.co.uk/charges. To learn about Wesleyan more generally, you can find us on our website formerly known as Twitter, as well as on Facebook, Instagram and LinkedIn. And if you found this podcast useful, you can like and subscribe to us on all the usual platforms, as well as over on YouTube, where there's a whole library of videos covering a wide range of financial planning topics. But that's it for now. So until next time, thanks for listening.